Hi, good evening. This is the second in the series of Martial Music endorsee interviews, and today I have the great honor of introducing Mr. Denholm Harding, bass player, drummer, bad singer extraordinaire. Yeah, he played in a little band called, what are they called?
Pete Pompies and the Stompies.
Pete Pompies and the Stompies. Kidding.
Yeah, I
joined Just Jinjer at the age of 19, and he wasn't even a bass player. So, big ups to you. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you.
Really
Thank
nice
you very
to have
much.
you.
I appreciate that. Stuart and I have known each other for a long time. I've driven him mad over the years with the gear acquisition syndrome, which is why this shop exists. So it's a good thing, and always been very helpful and sharing with your knowledge, and very receiving of the Seattle coffees that I keep buying you for discount. So appreciate it. Thanks.
Which I will be eternally grateful.
I mean, beep. I don't know if we're allowed endorsements. Beep coffee. Thanks, man.
Whenever I'm in a bad mood, I just see Denholm wafting through the door with Seattle mocha freezers, and I know that life's going to be okay.
Yeah, and it's not because I want anything, but I appreciate the free strings, and yeah, the penny dropped. Damn it, you caught me. How did you do it? Yeah.
Moving swiftly along.
Yeah. No, not at all. I do it in kind. No, really. I've migrated through a lot of instruments, and every time I come here with like, I'm a drummer this week and help. What are cymbals? What are sticks? And then the next week it's I need bass strings. What are those? And you guys have always been very patient and very understanding, and that's what it's about, man. You know, and I think that gear is it's a bottomless searching pit where marriages get lost and souls get destroyed. No, but we're all in. You know, the guys who do it for a living and the guys who take it seriously, we're always on an eternal quest to be better than ourselves.
Yeah.
And so you guys understand that, and you don't. I've walked in here inquiring about a 2,000 rand guitar and a 200,000 rand drum kit, and you treat it the same, and that's great, man. That's why you guys are where you are.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Speaking of gear, let's have a little brief rundown of your current bass rig and your current guitar rig.
Bass rig. I was trying to remember. I for a long time. When we stayed in the States for 7 years, I was only playing Ashdown. And then when I came to South Africa, I was overjoyed to know that Marshall had the agency, and immediately hopped onto that. And then when they started changing some of their productions and where the productions were taking place, and the tone started changing for me, and I approached Dane and I said, you know, is there anything under the Marshall umbrella that you'd like me to raise awareness for? And at the time he offered me a couple of stuff, and when he said Aguilar, I just lit up. I never thought I'd ever have the scratch to play Aguilar, but it's just such remarkable gear. And I remember the first time walking up Manny's music, up those like 3 flights of stairs and into that small bass room where they've just got wall-to-wall amps, and I just plugged in, like, I think those years it was a Lakeland or something, into this Aguilar, and I was just, my jaw was on the floor. And so when I got a chance to play that, and I still play it now, it's so incredible, that little rig. It's a Tone Hammer 500, which is Class D, but it handles and it responds so musically, you would swear there's valves and real circuitry going on there. But and then I've got 2 1x12, so I can split it up. You know, for some of the smaller gigs, if you don't want to, if your drummer's a panel beater, you need both. You know, if it's a jazz gig, you need one. But I think that's and then I have multiple variations of pedal boards and stuff, because in Just Jinjer, if I play bass, then I cover a lot of ground sonically, you know, octaves, synths, pads, whatever it needs to make a 3-piece sound, like 5 or 6 delays and things like that. But at the core of it, man, you know, you learn so much when you tour the world and you play different stages, and you pick other musicians' brains, and it's not going back to my parents are both pro musicians, and they have been my whole career, and I've been touring since I was 6 years old with David Kramer and things like that. So I've been pedigreed to be a musician, but it's weird. Like in South Africa, I always found that because we're a small country, there's a little bit of like everyone keeps their cards quite close to their chest. Whether it's, you know, I'll never forget, there was a guitar, and I wasn't even a guitarist, but I remember seeing a band that I really looked up to, and I walked up to the guitarist and I was like, man, your tone is unreal. What are you using? And he said, I keep those details safe with the whereabouts of Pierre Boerta or something. He like gave some very, very diabolical, sinister answer, and I got it. You know, like you agonize over tone and you change little capacitors within that thing that makes it different, and guys cover their pedal boards with like Velcro that you or like shrink wrap, you know, and there's pedals that aren't even connected just to throw people off. And I understand that, you know, you work, it's your baby, and it's also your thumbprint. And you know this better than I do. Someone can walk in here and that guitar hanging there can be played by 10 people and it'll sound 10 different ways. It really is in the hands, and the hands are connected to the spirit and the heart, and so all the the slightest change in pressure, or the slightest vibrato, or the slightest shake, or a steady hand, everything's different. And so I've never really, in my adult years, I've never really subscribed to the thing of like going out and buying the latest magazine that like interviews the latest and greatest like magician on a certain instrument, and then like, oh, I'm going to go and rush out and buy that person's signature whatever because it's going to make me sound like them. And that's impossible. I do a lot of studio work, and I've tried my best, even as a instrumentalist and a technician, and I'm proficient enough, and you cannot ever exactly replicate yourself. You can get it 99.9, but you know, so even that person on a certain day, whether it's overcast or sunny or the wind's blowing, or the tone changes, and you know that their touch, you can hear a person's touch and a person's feel. It's like a voice or a singer. You can put them through any mic and they'll sound like a version of themselves. But we're all human and we all fluctuate, which is where the good music comes from. You know, before the days of sterile editing and boiling the magic out of stuff to look for the perfect bar and copy that. You know, which is cool. I'm not knocking that. Some music requires that sort of regimental stiffness to facilitate another feeling, which is that's also cool. But you know, when it comes to bass gear, I had a run of active basses because when you just get into an instrument, you want to be the loudest on stage and you want to be the biggest and you want to cover the most space, and you don't realize that how you sound through 4 10-inch speakers is not the same frequencies that come through 18-inch and 15 mid-high. So you crank the low end and you send all of that information to the desk, and the guy's doing like high-pass filtering, and he's like doing whatever he can, and it's all and no one can hear you. And I remember being so bummed out when I used to like think I had the gig of my life, and people would come and say, I couldn't hear you. And I'm like, what are you? Do you need like your ears checked or something?
We had the best PA in the world.
Because I lived on the 5th string, and it's like, you know, it's below the kick, and then you like listen to these old Weather Report records, or I don't know, Earth, Wind and Fire or something, or like Steely Dan records with Chuck Rainey playing, and they're playing on like the most passive banjo-esque P basses that have no low end, and it just sounds so incredible. And you realize that it's the combination of the kick drum and the bass. Unless you're Victor Wooten, no one's ever going to hear you without a drum kit. So it's how those two, it's called a rhythm section for a reason, you know. And if the drummer only uses his sub kick and you only use your active circuitry, no one's going to hear, there's going to be no beat, you know. But you don't know this when you're young and you're trying to be bigger and more, and then you grow up and you watch other bands and you just listen to the room and you realize that. And over the years I learned, sometimes I'd be playing and I'd play, and then I wouldn't hear myself in the room, and then instead of playing an open D, or I'd play the D here, or I'd play the D on the E string, and suddenly I'd hear the note, and then I'd live here for the rest of the set, because that room,
that's where it's happening.
Every room has a sound, and you realize this more and more when you do studio work. But as a live artist, I don't think a lot of bands realize that your gear and your obsession and everything is dependent on so many variables.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's a performance, and if you really are passionate about your songs and your craft and your voice, whatever instrument, whether it's the harp or whatever, all of this stuff is, you got to hear, you got to listen the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the drum is hitting harder than the other note, so you got to adjust, you got to move the hand more, whatever. You know, or guitarists just turn up their amps, which is
it's the easy go-to.
Yeah. I have a 100-watt Marshall, dude. This is gonna get ugly. Yeah, the drummer's like in the evening, he's in like barrels of vinegar, like my hands, and the guitar's like I didn't even break a sweat, dude.
So talking of guitar, you're also becoming known as a really nice guitar player, even though you've only been playing for what
5 minutes,
3 or 4 years or so.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your guitar gear over the last few years.
Yeah, so I think the guitar is the instrument that gets the most flack and has the harshest critics. I didn't realize this, and I never realized that when I was a drummer and a bass player, and guitarists would have the gig of their lives, and you'd be like, don't touch a thing. It sounded great. And they go, yeah. And then the next night, it's like, you know, it was EVH stacks, and the next night it's 8 cubes daisy chained. No, this is the new vibe now. What? And then like, it's not as good as the EVH. And then they go back to the store and buy it at twice what they pawned it, you know. And I never understood why guitarists do that. I never understood it. And I realized that tone and how it feels under the fingers, that is irrelevant. Someone can tell you sound incredible out front, but if you hit the strings and the guitar, the notes are dying, there's not enough gain on the amp or something. Yeah. Guitarists are very much about how it feels
immediately.
And then it makes you a better player. You know, unless you're a guy that's got like 8 hours a day of muscle memory practice, and you don't care what amp you plug into, and you're not that way inclined. But most guitarists are extremely driven by passion and ego. For good reason, and so they put a lot of pride into everything, you know. So when I started playing guitar, straight into like 6 nights a week, it took me a long time to figure out what it was that I didn't like. Because in the moment when the drummer starts having tequila and every set gets louder and you run out of headroom, and then everything starts getting saturated, and now your drive pedals don't sound so lucky anymore, and all the levels are, and you're like, what is going on here? And then you start doing tequila as well, just to like get through the gig or whatever, and then the next morning you start it all again. It took me a long time to realize, okay, so let's keep one thing constant and change a bunch of stuff, and then move on to the next. So for me it was like, okay, I started with the instrument. So just like, okay, do I like maple necks? Do I like rosewood necks? Do I like stainless steel frets? Do I like hot pickups? Do I like humbuckers? And you go down that, and then you find, okay, doesn't matter what amp I plug into, this guitar, this combination under my fingers, it does what I want it to do. And then you chase, okay, do I want American valves, British valves? Do I want solid state? Do I whatever? And then you go, okay, these amps generally, cool. And then the pedal thing. And then the cable thing, then the strings thing.
Picks,
big thing. Once I found my pick, I was so like, I became that guy. I was like, hey, what pick are you using? Coffee tins. Because I searched so long, and it makes such a huge difference to tone.
People just think picks are about the thickness, but it's so much more than that. It's the material.
Absolutely. Yeah. So. The gear that I'm now, I mean, in studio I use a lot of, I love the Casino, the Epiphone Casino.
Nice.
It's just it sits in the mix in a fantastic way, and I love Interpol. They're like my favorite guitar band, and when I heard that guitar, I was like, what is that? And whatever that is, I want it. And I was like, okay, it's time to start saving up. And when I found out it's a Casino, I was like, what? It's like one of the cheapest guitars in the market, but it sounds fantastic, and it's so tangible, and it feeds, and it's a gnarly guitar too, but it's so inspiring to play.
And it doesn't sound like a Fender, it doesn't sound like a Gibson.
Yeah,
it's just nice, different.
And when you want it, it can have a bit of a hollow body woolliness, but if you want it can also have that biting Les Paul kind of, maybe a Les Paul Junior type thing going. So Obviously a Les Paul is a Les Paul. Grant Fouché, who's a local builder, has built 4 guitars for me now. And I just love it. Again, it's just because I don't have 20 years of muscle memory, and I love the old 70s or whatever. Grant builds guitars that I kind of say to him, I want it to feel like a baseball bat, because I'm used to bass necks. So then he gives me like, the 58 or 59 Pros, and they got that perfect C thing. And so, and then the Tom Anderson pickups are like, again, for in my hands and for in through my chain and through almost every amp I've put it through its paces. It's just so musical, and so it just sits in a mix in a fantastic way. And no matter where you are, you don't get lost in the mix. It holds its frequency response in a PA. You can have an 11-piece band. So that I've gone through the rabbit hole of, I've probably owned 50, 60 plus amps, and the Mesa Boogie Stiletto is my rig, because it's
going through Marshalls and Voxes Fenders,
went through a couple of boutique local builders as well, tried a couple of hand built international amps as well through friends of mine, tried different direct approaches, with the modeling and stuff like that, and I must say, man,
that's never been your thing, huh?
It's never really been my thing, simply
you want
because
those valves.
Well,
just explain in your personal, in your why, an amp's got to be real versus,
well,
the modeling thing.
Yeah. Whenever you see the shootouts of digital, which is like a direct signal, which then gets digitally amplified, and the signal gets processed and then manipulated, and then you hear it through the speakers, versus like an analog signal going through an analog electrical current circuit chain, being amplified by valves, and then the output and how the speakers react, whatever, So the only way that I can explain it, for me, when there's a band or when there's a mix that's happening, is that the digital signal is like mist. You can see it, and it's there, but it's transparent, versus rain.
Okay.
When it hits you, it's tangible. You can feel it. But for me, that's just for me. And it's getting better and better all the time. But I think that some of the inconsistencies and some of the noise and some of the stuff that comes with it's where tone lives and where magic lives. Especially when you're trying to capture a moment or trying to create something new. If you are trying to emulate, and maybe there's one of your favorite bands that plays a particular profiling or modeling or digital thing, and they give you their patches, and you go and buy their guitar and you get their patches and you cover their songs, you're still not going to sound like them. You don't have their hands.
Yeah, 100%.
So you can almost fail twice. You can fail yourself, and you can also fail the public, because now you're comparable, because you're trying to be something. If you're just being yourself, people can't compare you. They can just say, I don't like it, but they can't say, you're worse. Worse than what?
Yeah.
I'm just myself. So, and it's cool to I think we all start out as musicians chasing a ghost, trying to be somebody, to this day maybe even still. And then you shoot for the stars, and you find yourself along the way, and you add that to your arsenal. It's like you walk and you collect little licks or little tones, or, oh, that's a good trick, or and so for guitaring, that real and also I enjoy how very, very manipulatable an analog signal chain is. For example, at the front of house or at the amp or on my guitar or whatever, when I make tonal adjustments, it's radical, but it's still there. What I found sometimes in the digital domain is if you start EQing especially in studio, if you're on if you don't have a Pultec or something, or some analog desk or whatever, and you're now using digital EQ on a digital signal chain, and then you start having to crank the gain because now I can't hear it anymore. So it's actually just the path of least resistance. I haven't really thought about it, but now that I'm thinking about
makes sense.
It's just easy for me to plug in, and also you don't have choice fatigue. I think my personality, I can barely order a meal without taking 45 minutes to wait a minute, but if I substitute the tomato and I bring in some pickle, so now if someone says to me, you've got 1,000 amps, it's like the gig will start tomorrow afternoon. I'll be like, wait a minute, it's almost ready. No, wait a minute. But if I combine the clean with it, I'll drive myself mad, So I think it's horses for courses, man. I've heard some guys sound fantastic and whatever. I've also heard guys through a Sans amp, straight to desk with a 7-string Ibanez, and it's like, how are you sounding this good? It's just talent and hands and application. If you ask that guy to play a jazz set, it's probably going to not sound great, but in a certain thing, it's like, man, I couldn't sound better than that. So horses for courses, man.
Okay.
And you guys have
So let's talk about the studio thing. You are making your name as one of the top, I don't want to say rock producers, I'll just say producers in the country.
Thanks, man.
You've done the last 2 Prime Circle albums. You've just done Johnny Clegg's new album. You work with Jesse Clegg. You've done Gangs of Ballet. It's really, really awesome.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about firstly your approach to producing. How do you get involved with artists in terms of getting the best out of them? And then talk a little bit about some of the gear that you're using in the studio, your favorite little toys.
Cool. Okay, so the approach, again, horses for courses. I try not to have a sound so that I don't imprint something on an artist that when I'm not around, there's a ghost of something that they can't replicate, or that they feel like they're in costume. So what I try and do is just be an innocent eye, and kind of it's like a stylist that doesn't make people feel bad about themselves, if that is such a thing. But someone who says you should try a pair of boots, and it's like, I don't know how I feel about that. I've never really worn boots. I think it would suit you, and then grab a pair, put it on, take a picture, take them off, go and sleep on it. Look at your phone in a week's time, and then the picture comes up. It's like, are those boots? Actually,
is that me?
Actually, yeah. And then you plant the seed, and then and sometimes that's where the good stuff comes from. That slight uncomfortability, and then you concentrate and you push more because now you're not comfortable, and so you're whether you a different vocal range or you're trying a different instrument, or I'll try lots of stuff. I'll make people. It doesn't really matter. I do really crazy stuff just to get people to feel like the most flattering representation of themselves, and then of course the tools of the trade come in. So that's the approach, and then the execution of that is having the best, quickest path of least resistance, because the studio can be like a pressure cooker environment where insecurities and angst and resentment or hangovers
can
or whatever.
Be the best place and the worst place.
It becomes like everything's under the magnifying glass, and so I do a lot of stuff in the box because it allows me to very quickly make some changes in the embryo stages of a production. So before I commit to finding if it needs live drums, and then go down that rabbit hole of sizes, skins, sticks, microphone placement, microphone choice, signal chain, compressions, all that sort of stuff. Long before that, it's about, I'll just bring up something, and that's where Arturia, I love that stuff. It's so musical, and it's so intuitive. Like if you just bring up those models of the old Moogs that they have, or the Prophets or the Junos, and you just click on some presets and you can just turn some stuff, and their filtering is so great. Even though it's virtual synth, the actual filtering is so close to the real thing. The cutoffs, and just how you can get the huge synths suddenly become a bass sound with the right cutoff, and then quickly someone in the room goes, "Oh, I love that," and that sparks a writing thing and that sort of stuff. So,
and you're also using a lot of Strymon guitar effects on vocals and keys and everything, hey? Basses.
Yeah, if I could literally run the master bus through my pedal board, I probably would. But yeah, again, just because it holds its ground. I've tried so many. I mean, I probably have 100 different reverb packs and engines and algorithms, and then you just use the real deal, or you actually use the spring reverb on that amp, and you just listen back, and it just is that thing. You know, there's a reason why, and maybe it's because it's our guilty pleasures. When I think about like a dirty blues tone or whatever, and I hear that, my tail starts wagging, because I have maybe a subliminal memory attached to that's what I thought is music, you know.
Yeah.
And then of course it's up to the room and up to the artist, and they either get excited and it inspires them, or we go the digital route and I put like a really thin digital hall reverb on the guitar, and then it starts sounding like a pop guitar, and then now we're going down a different path, and then we revisit our hi-hat choices, and maybe now we're not even doing that. Maybe we're using vocal hats.
Yeah, it's amazing the effect. Just the fork in the road, you know.
Yeah, and I think anybody in music, man, we're all just so blessed to get to play around like this every day. It's like you've won the lottery, you know.
You've got a nice job.
I must say, I work with really nice people, and I have a nice job, man. And I think that if you have that integrity and you serve that, then you're going to be okay. I think, I really try and, whether it's the artist or me or the engineer or the mixing engineer or the mastering engineer or whoever's in the chain, something beautiful happens when you remove the ego and you insert integrity, and you without getting like tree huggy about it, but it is, man, and it's psychology as well. Music is such a deeply personal thing, and it's so intimate, so I take it deathly seriously.
Nice listening to your words of wisdom. Brilliant. Thank you.
Cheers, bro.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking up your valuable time. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for thinking me worthy to drop.
He's not worthy.
Yeah.
He's not worthy.
Well, if you book them, they will come. And you did promise me some.
Thank you again. Thank you, Denholm Harding.
Thanks, you, Stuart.
guys.
Good one.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for
you.
joining us, and
Hope it helps.
We'll catch you soon.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing you all out there, hearing your work and hearing your interpretation of stuff. I don't know which camera to look at, but I'm a fan of everyone's, man. Let's make the circle bigger. I'm excited to hear what's coming out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks,
Cheers, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.